Y eso, pues, está justamente lo que dijiste tú, les está destruyendo la inocencia, quienes
Sí.
les estamos destruyendo la inocencia, quienes tendríamos que estarles cuidando y protegiendo esa inocencia para que gradualmente, como es la vida y la naturaleza, la vaya perdiendo de una manera natural.
Exacto. Porque además la mente de los niños es muy frágil. Cuando un niño rompe, por ejemplo, el acuerdo del amor, o sea, todos somos producto del amor de una pareja, todos. Nadie llegó aquí en cigüeña ni en huevo de gallina, o sea, venimos a la tierra por un amor, o no tanto amor, pero por una pareja que se une. Cuando un niño ve pornografía, se rompen todos los acuerdos de su vida sobre quién eres, porque la mente de los niños es muy frágil. O sea, por eso antes de los 12 años, cuidar la inocencia tiene que ser así la prioridad de cualquier país, ¿no? De cualquier país que quiera realmente el bienestar de sus ciudadanos. Entonces, eso me gusta.
Scoop on the dynamic world of investing, buying, and selling homes. Now, we want to be your resource for all things real estate. I'm your host, Michelle Briggs. The landscape of real estate market has undergone substantial shifts over the past 5 years, introducing new challenges for prospective home buyers. Navigating today's market comes with its share of complexities and are some key reasons. Now, these are some key reasons behind the difficulties buyers currently are facing. Now, the scarce inventory, we've talked about this before. Presently, the number of available homes for sale is notably lower than it was half a decade ago. Now, the shortage can be attributed to a confluence of factors including pandemic repercussions, disruptions in supply chains, and escalating interest rates. Now, our homes are escalating. The home prices have experienced remarkable escalations within the past 5 years. Factors driving this surge include historically low interest rates, a robust demand, and limited inventory. I mean, the steep price tags attached to homes are rendering it increasingly challenging for potential buyers to find properties within their budget. You also have to look at the competition. I mean, the intense competition that buyers have. The competition among buyers has intensified in the current market, largely due to a combination of low inventory and high prices. At the beginning of summer, we were seeing multiple offers, and as we move into September, the pace has slowed. Now, the qualifications, lenders have raised the bar on their lending criteria in recent years. This shift means that aspiring homebuyers might require a higher credit score and a more substantial down payment to qualify for a mortgage. Now, for those considering a home purchase, and in today's climate, preparing for the challenges inherent to the present market condition is crucial. Now, being proactive, moving swiftly, being open to surpassing the asking price potentially, and showcasing strong financial qualifications are essential strategies that can enhance your prospects for success in the competitive real estate arena. Now, here are some supplementary insights to help guide you in your home buying journey in the current market. Now, of course, we've talked about this many times. Secure a pre-approval. You've heard us say it. Now, this is one you have to have before you start looking at a new home. You want to have a proficient agent. Partnering with a skilled real estate agent can be instrumental in finding a home that aligns with your needs and financial plan. Now, you have to be ready to compromise. Having openness to compromise on factors such as location, size, specific features can widen your option and increase the likelihood of a successful purchase. And of course, persistence is key. The journey toward homeownership may be demanding, but with diligence and tenacity, you can achieve your goal of finding the ideal home. Now, I've said this before, stay prepared, informed, and persistent. You can navigate these challenges and secure the right home for you. And we'll be right back after this commercial break.
República H, con Sofía García.
Una república que necesita saber cuál es el camino correcto.
En República H te diremos qué pasa en cada rincón del país. ¿Qué pasa en tu estado? ¿Qué hace tu gobernador, presidente municipal o alcalde en materia de seguridad, salud, desarrollo, economía o servicios básicos para atender a su población. Tenemos desplegados más de 70 corresponsales en todo el país y más allá de las fronteras. República H, de lunes a viernes a las 8 de la noche por Heraldo Televisión.
Palitos y Bolitas es la catedral de la explicación. Este programa es la única parada que necesitas para entender los porqués y cómo de todo lo que pasa en México y el mundo. Lunes a viernes, 7 p.m. por Heraldo Televisión.
Welcome back, everyone. We are continuing our show with our guest, Andrew Glisson. Now, he has been on our show before. He's an investor, and he has a great product, and then he knows what he is doing. How are you doing, Andrew?
Doing great. Thanks, Michelle. How are you?
Great. Okay. I want to start off quickly before we get into our questions. I want to acknowledge that you are in the same house that we taped from last week. And last week, you know, everyone that's watching, there was nothing but boxes behind him. Look at this progress. You've got
yeah.
cabinets
We basically had a pallet, 2 pallets worth of cabinets sitting in boxes that were behind me. I'm super happy to say those pallets are now unboxed and they are behind me, hanging on the wall. So we're making progress in this project quickly, thankfully.
Very quickly, so I'm impressed. I am very impressed. So Andrew, now we're talking about, you know, one of the things we talk about and what you have is the Airbnb, right? And having an Airbnb business that you started last year. There's been some press about the municipalities cracking down on short-term rentals. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I very cautiously stepped into the Airbnb business. I had built a portfolio of close to 200 single-family homes before I even touched Airbnb at all, because I was, you know, it was a fad. Everybody was jumping into it. I'm not one to chase fads. You know, long-term rentals have been, you know, very stable, consistent returns, easy to finance, easy to work with. And so I was just a little bit concerned, if we jump into short-term rentals, what are the implications? What does the future hold? And so, you know, I think we experienced locally where we have our Airbnbs is in Memphis, Tennessee. And they had not made the decision until recently where they voted on some regulations to outline what operators, you know, must do and how they have to keep their houses, you know, clean and safe and party free and all that kind of stuff. They had just voted on something like that when I got in. And so I didn't want to jump in where the municipality had not made a decision on that, because if you look at Dallas, it's probably the news article that you're mentioning, Dallas just voted to kick out all the Airbnbs altogether. I mean, so people are completely losing their livelihoods. And there's a lot of municipalities around the country that have done that. And so for me, getting into the Airbnb business, and we're adding Airbnbs slowly as time goes on. This is going to be one that I'm in right now. It's going to be another short-term rental. But we know what the future holds now because the municipality has made the decision. And so we know what the expectation is of us. We know what the house has got to be. We know the inspections that we have to go through in order to have the business. But it was real important that we knew that what the expectation was and how the municipality was going to go before we got into it. I think way too many investors around the country, you know, jump into the fad and they're like, Airbnb is a great business. And you can't make long-term rentals work with high interest rates a lot of times and make cash flow. But a lot of people see the allure of short-term rentals because they can make the cash flow and get into real estate. But you have to make sure, and this is what we did, that the municipality that you're doing the Airbnb at has made a decision, because you could scale up and lose it all, you know, with a stroke of a pen if city council decides they don't want Airbnbs anymore. So that's a big topic. I mean, I encourage everybody that I talk to in the business around the country, just wait, invest where they've made that decision, and you know what you're walking into.
That's very smart. It really is. Yeah. When you think about it, and the people that are losing their minds in Dallas, it's, you know, you don't know what's going to happen with that. I mean, I personally know in our Lake Home community that we have short-term rentals that are Airbnbs, and we have a lot of our neighbors that are not fans. So it's something that you have to look at, because what they're passing in our community is when those homes go for sale, they cannot be sold with the intent of being a short-term rental. So you really have to be able to have the wherewithal, right, for change. So,
and you mentioned something that was really important there, like your HOA, your community. And so it's not just, you know, the city that you're in. So, the city that I'm in passed laws that you can have Airbnbs, but a friend of mine I was having lunch with just yesterday lives in a community where the HOA is now outlawing all that, like yours is. And so you can no longer have a short-term rental. They've actually outlawed rental properties altogether in the HOA, it's passing deed restrictions. You can't have rental properties at all. So, I mean, that's something you just have to watch out for, especially, in the municipality level, then in the HOA, like you just talked about. That's super important.
Right. Read your deed restrictions, right? What is the intent of purchase? So it's very important. So in your business, how do you decide between flipping, renting, renting to long-term tenants, or turning property into an Airbnb?
Yeah. So, when I bought this house, I originally bought it to flip it. And I started looking at the numbers and realized, I'm going to give half of the income that I make off of this house over to the government. There's better ways to do this. And I'm not really a flipper. I've flipped very few houses in my career as a real estate professional. And I am a real estate professional. So I get an advantage in the tax code that a lot of, regular passive investors don't get. So the tax code and some of the depreciation items and some of the tax incentives that I can take are super advantageous to somebody like me for keeping properties. And so one of the things that I did was recently built a calculator, and I have it available in my course, SFR University. And the calculator is geared to help you make that decision. Should I flip this house? Should I, BRRRR the house out, which is cash out refinance? What does that look like? What do my returns look like? And then I've built into that calculator a cost segregation depreciation calculator, because a lot of people don't realize, if you're making cash flow, you can take advantage of some depreciation opportunities that can significantly improve your cash flow year one. And so I just run it through a simulator. I run it through a model, and out comes the model. Am I going to make cash flow, and I'm going to make the return that I expect? If not, I'm going to have to flip it. But if I can make it work to keep it, and based on the financing that I'm going to get, it all goes into a spreadsheet. It all goes into a calculator, and I unemotionally make a decision about how I'm going to, or what I'm going to do with that property based on, income levels, how much I could sell it for, how much I can get in depreciation if I keep it. So there's a bunch of factors, but basically my calculator tells me what I'm going to do with it.
I think I saw that on the Instagram that you did the other day. Now, is it harder to find financing for an Airbnb as opposed to a regular rental property?
It can be. I mean, certain banks do not like short-term rentals. Certain hard money lenders don't like short-term rentals. So I guess the thing that you really have to watch out for is that if you're financing a rental property, most local and regional banks don't want to give you a 30-year loan product for that. They want to give you a 20-year amortized 5-year commercial loan, and they are really kind of agnostic a lot of times if it's short-term rental or long-term rental. But if you look at some of the 30-year products that are out there, some of the 30-year products, they don't like short-term rentals. So they're going to ask you what you're going to do with that. Is it going to be a short-term rental, or are you going to have a long-term lease on that? And so short-term rentals for banks, a bank, they're underwriting as, if we have to take this property over and run it, then what are we going to do with it? And a bank doesn't want to do that, first of all. And they don't understand short-term rentals at all. So they don't want to inherit a short-term rental, because if that's the only way it's making cash flow, the bank's going to go underwater really quick, because they don't want to operate short-term rentals. They don't want to operate long-term rentals, but that's safer because somebody's locked into a year-long contract. And so that's why, from a financing standpoint, it's easier to get long-term rentals financed because there's a long-term lease in place. The bank knows if they inherit it, they've got a couple months where they can offload it and not have to worry about the headache. If it's a short-term rental, that's not the case. And so it can be harder. And so that's a good question. When you're talking to banks trying to get financing on short-term rentals, it's good to ask that question right up front, because you don't want to go through the underwriting where the banker's assuming that this is going to be a rental property. It's going to be a short-term rental, and it comes up at the very end of the transaction, can you send us the lease? And then you're like, uh-oh. And so I've run through scenarios in the past where I have tried to put financing on properties that had significant property damage, a fire, a flood, stuff like that. Bank doesn't want to touch it as soon as they find out that that's the case. And you can't assume that they're looking at your pictures. You can't assume that they're hearing everything that you have to say. You have to communicate really clearly what you're going to do with this property and the strategy that you have for it, so the bank can underwrite properly and you don't get left at the altar at the last minute. But yeah, there's tons of banks out there that will finance short-term rentals. You just have to be upfront, honest, cold call a lot of banks. I mean, I'm cold calling banks like crazy right now, because the interest rate can be anywhere from 7.25 to, I mean, I got a quote yesterday on this house for 8.5, which was like, no way. So, it's not as easy to finance a short-term rental, but there's tons of lenders out there that'll do it.
Right. Now, how do you build a budget to fully furnish the home?
Yeah, so short-term rentals, my budget is about $12 to $15 a square foot on furnishing. And that is everything that you have to put in here from. That doesn't include appliances. Appliances are already in the house. Every house I do, I'm buying appliances. These are things like, rugs, utensils, silverware. I'm looking around the room like, what do I have to do? I've got to hang pictures on the wall, stuff like that. Towels. So 12 to $15 a square foot. I mean, I'm not building luxury Airbnbs. Mine are, look, I'm flying in. I got stuck at the airport. I need a place to crash overnight. Or I'm driving through town. These are great places to stay, a couple things to do, not super heavy amenity, rich, but they look great. They're well done. And so that $12 to $15 a square foot range, really kind of dials you into where you need to be. Most of the Airbnbs that I have are 1,000 square feet, and I'm going to spend $15,000 on, soup to nuts, getting that thing fully kitted out. And that brings up I always go off in these tangents when we talk because you've got to remember when you're building that budget back to, financing this and building a budget, running it through a calculator. Don't forget that you have to escrow for, some capital expenses because you're going to have a broken couch in 2 years. You're going to have to replace that rug because somebody's going to spill red wine on it overnight and you're going to have to replace it. So there's things that are going to come up that you're going to have to replace. So that's our budget. And then we escrow monthly to try to save up some money when we have to replace things in a couple of years.
Got it. Now, Andrew, there is so much more to this Airbnb and management and, operations, the aspect of it. But I know that we're going to have you back, and I want to thank you again for being with us and follow you on Instagram. What's your handle?
It's Andrew.Glisson on Instagram. So you can follow me there and, keep up with our crazy progress. We renovate a lot, so it's a lot of fun. We're always documenting everything online. You have some great information. I follow you. So thank you again for being with us. Thanks, Michelle. And everyone, we'll be right back after this commercial break. All right, so we'll change shirt.
The best bilingual news, business talk, and technology content 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You are watching Now Media Television, the first bilingual media network in the United States.
El tema está en los países. Liderazgo y experiencia. Nuestro país debe meterse en las grandes discusiones y en los grandes debates. Son parte de una carrera exitosa. Se juegan dos estados. Él es referente en el periodismo. No definen el 2024. Javier Solórzano te espera cada noche para llevarte las noticias, el análisis y las entrevistas más importantes de lo que sucede día a día en el país. Este es el referente de la noche.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm your host, Michelle Briggs, your personal real estate. We are having a great time today, and our guests, we're continuing our show with Courtney Hughes. Now, Courtney Hughes is the owner of 360 Painting West Houston. And I've said this before, and I will say it again. I have not met a person that knows paint as well as her. How are you doing, Courtney?
I am doing well. Thanks for having me back. Love being here. So really great to see you.
Oh gosh, we learned so much from you. I mean, we learned so much, and all the differences about painting. There's so many aspects and so many levels of owning a paint company, but truly knowing what it looks like. And today, our conversation, we're going to be talking about differences in paint finishes. There are so many. We've talked before about what paint you use on the different type of surfaces, right? Mm-hmm. So today we're going to talk about those different paint finishes. So tell us a little bit about that.
So it's actually one of the first things that we ask when we go to do an estimate for a potential client, which is, okay, you have satin on your walls right now. Do you want satin, or are you wanting a more of a higher sheen or less of a high sheen? I think it's interesting. Like you said, there's a variety of different ones, and they vary based on really the shine that you see and that is reflected off of the wall. So we start with a flat, which has zero shine, zero sheen to it. And then depending on what line you are within, you can go to an eggshell, which is also be used synonymously with a satin. Then there's also, in between that, depending on what line again, you do have a matte, which has just a soft little sheen to it. Following your flat matte satin, it's a semi-gloss followed by a high gloss. So it really becomes a personal preference for most people. But oftentimes we get the question of, well, what would you do in your own home? And that is always a difficult question to answer because one, we've talked about it, but personal preference. You know, do you like any sheen, or are you more like, I just want a flat canvas? Are you someone that has a lot of children that, you know, might take a marker to the wall, or marinara fingers, as I call them, to the wall? If you are, you might want some washability, which your flat and your mattes are not going to have that washability. Right. As soon as you start putting a wet cloth to that wall or that surface, you're probably going to start seeing some of those marks. Now, a satin or an eggshell, you can take up a warm cloth and lightly dab and erase some of those marks from the wall. And then the higher sheen you get, the more washability that you have.
Where would you see, because my mind is going, because it's eggshells and mats, and there's so much to that. You know, I personally, you know, my home is like in a matte finish, but then then we've got that eggshell and the satin in the bathroom. And so when you talk about the different levels, can you tell us, when you look at an eggshell, where do you normally see that? Is that's throughout the home, where a satin is in fact a kitchen or a bathroom? Can you talk about the different areas where the different paints
you might
be applied?
No, I think that's a great question. So, for instance, where might you want a highly washable walls? I would say one, the kitchen. The kitchen is the first place where you're like, you know, I don't know about you, but I'm chopping away and something goes on the wall. That is where I would like the ability to be able to wipe down without being a little too worried that I'm going to see that stain or that mark, you know, come the next day. Another great place for something with a little bit more of a sheen versus flat or matte would be a bathroom. So oftentimes we see in a bathroom that the walls, you know, you'll collect a lot of humidity. If you're like me, I take steaming hot showers, so we will have a lot of humidity collect. If you have flat walls, you might see some of those water streams come down. So you might opt for an eggshell or a satin in your bathrooms rather than a flat or a matte. And then truly, if you are someone that is like, ooh, I want like a little bit of flair somewhere, you might consider a semi-gloss or a high gloss in a bar area, or something that, you know, you might not want to pay the price for a lacquer on your walls that has that car finish to it, that hard shell, but you still may want something that stands out and separates the area itself, which a high gloss can do. So think about that the next time that you want to like make something stand out within your home, whether that's a bar area or a fun bookcase, something just to give the, you know, the texture a little bit of pop within the home.
I never thought about the high gloss. Never thought about the high gloss, because when you think about that, I mean, when you have, you know, I personally have a wall that it's an ombre, right? And it's kind of it's not really a bar area, but it's the fun space for us. And I never thought about putting. Is there a clear finish for that, or is it actual paint that's that?
So usually,
high gloss.
Great question. You do have, depending on the look that you want, you can do a top coat that has a higher gloss finish to it. But typically it is the paint itself that has that high gloss. Also, when you're thinking about finishes, the other question that you want to say or ask yourself is, do I have a lot of flaws on my ceilings or my walls? The flatter, the less sheen that you have, the more that you are going to be able to hide some of those flaws. So when you think about a home, typically you will have a flat on your ceilings because that's where we see those those minor fractures and fissures start showing up. And then they do, like if you're like me and live in an old home, they do pop up on your walls and it's frustrating. But the lower sheen that you have, the less visible they become. So really, we always opt and we just try to give the best advice to any and all of our clients. But that's why I was suggesting a pop of a high gloss in certain areas, because those can also get costly if you ever have any fractures in the walls.
Now you have consultants, 360 Painting has consultants. Is that part of the consultant is going over the different type of finishes inside of whatever that room and what they're trying to accomplish? Is that part of the conversation?
Oh, absolutely. So truly, the consultants that we offer a variety. We have designers that we can put you in touch with, and then we also have color consultants that work with Benjamin Moore and Sherwin-Williams that we're always happy to link you up with. You don't typically have to bring it up. They will ask that question for you, but they're also going to be a great point of reference to say, okay, this is your living room, and you want a calm atmosphere. Here's a neutral, cool tone palette that you might want to consider. And also, you may want to consider a flat or a matte or eggshell finish here.
Yeah. I know. And I've never thought, of course the bathroom, inside in the bathroom area, and I take hot showers as well. So I've never really thought about the impact of that on the wall. It just never crossed my mind. And I can't imagine having a bathroom where you're having, streaks going down because of the wrong paint. But I guess that happens.
It does. It happens more often than not. And a lot of that also has to do with, did you actually apply the right paint? There are paints that have mold and mildew resistance built in, so they're specifically formulated to, be able to fight the humidity that is coming at it. So it's not just the finish, it's actually the paint formulation itself. But yes, we do see that often when we come in to repaint bathrooms. There are often streaks. So no, if you're thinking, oh, I thought that was just my home. It's not. It's not.
It happens all the time.
Yeah. It's irregular.
Oh my God. Okay. So we talk about, I know we've kind of talked about textures before, but when you think about the eggshell and the matte, you're saying that they're not the same, or they are the same?
So a lot of these terms can be used synonymously. And I think I touched on this, but it depends on the actual paint line that you are using, and then the paint, the different types of paint within that paint line. So for instance, if you were going to Sherwin-Williams, if you are using a premium paint doesn't come in an eggshell finish at Sherwin-Williams. It only comes in satin. So fun fact. So you would have a flat, a matte, a satin, a semi-gloss, and a high gloss, depending on what line and product that you wanted to use. If you are using a contract grade, which is just slightly below the premium, then you will have an eggshell finish. You'll have a flat eggshell and a semi-gloss. Interesting. I always thought that was interesting when I came into the painting world. And then that's totally different for, say Benjamin Moore PPG. It totally depends on who you're using. But the terms matte and flat can be used synonymously often, and so can eggshell and satin.
So ask the question, right?
Always.
Ask the question, is it satin or is it eggshell? To really define what you're looking for, and having that ready for your painter when you call 360 Painting, and know that they can support the conversation and help you make that decision on what works best for the room and what you're out to accomplish.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So how long have you been doing this, Courtney?
Oh man. So I am I'm the stepdaughter to a contractor who's been in the business for 40 plus years. So I've known about paint for quite some time. 360 Painting West Houston has been around now for 3+ years, and we've been lucky to be in business for that long. We love what we do, and honestly, our business, we really truly believe that our business is people, and paint is our commodity. So we always put people first, And then we've found that it really is all about asking the right questions to make sure that you actually get the final product that you're looking for.
Mm-hmm. Now we're just showing your website, so we invite everyone, take a look at Courtney's website. There's so much on that website. So Courtney, thank you again for being with us today. We really appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I love coming.
Yes. And everyone, you will see Courtney again, and we will be right back after this commercial break.
República H, con Sofía García.
Una república que necesita saber cuál es el camino correcto.
En República H te diremos qué pasa en cada rincón del país. ¿Qué pasa en tu estado? ¿Qué hace tu gobernador, presidente municipal o alcalde en materia de seguridad, salud, desarrollo, economía o servicios básicos para atender a su población? Tenemos desplegados más de 70 corresponsales en todo el país y más allá de las fronteras.
República H, de lunes a viernes a las 8 de la noche por Heraldo Televisión.
Palitos y Bolitas es la catedral de la explicación. Este programa es la única parada que necesitas para entender los porqués y cómo de todo lo que pasa en México y el mundo. Lunes a viernes, 7 p.m. por Heraldo Televisión.
Welcome back, everyone, for Your Personal Real Estate. I'm Michelle Brigg, your host. Our next guest is Inna Radford. Now, Inna is all commercial. Now, she is knowledgeable. She knows her stuff, and we enjoy having her as a resource. Now, commercial real estate is a whole nother process, and I personally don't think it really compares to residential. And having her here with us today, we're going to learn a little bit more about the differences and about investing in commercial real estate. How are you doing today, Inna?
Hey, Michelle, great to see you.
Now, you're out of town right now. You're joining us from where?
Well, actually, I did just get back from Brazil, and just jet lag, and also I'm doing my best here.
I knew. I was like, oh, she's just in town, or you were still out of town. So thank you, and I'm glad you're safely home. Now, talking about investing in commercial real estate, now there's an allure to investing in commercial property. But what exactly, when you're looking at the profit avenue or avenues, what does that look like?
Yeah, it's a really broad subject, and obviously anytime you hear somebody invest in commercial real estate, you think, oh, that's big, that's huge, that's big money. And most of the time it truly is. But there are so many ways to invest so many assets. For the purposes of this discussion, I'm going to assume that all assets are great, whether it's industrial, office, retail, land, whichever. But what are the ways to actually make money purchasing those? So first, you can be a developer, right, where you buy a piece of land and you build it so you create your own real estate asset. It is a full-time job. It requires vision. It requires a lot of work, and you better know what you're doing. Second is for somewhat passive investors, and that's, I would separate it into three categories. Most people buy real estate for the coupon payment, basically where every year they get some money because the rental income they collect from the property exceeds the expenses on the property. Just the way you think about buying a certificate deposit from a bank, right? You put your money in and then you get percentage. And that's kind of similar, but obviously it's not as liquid as a CD. Another one is value add, which is a really attractive way to make money, is where you buy a property which maybe undermanaged, or somebody who owns it doesn't know what they're doing. They don't know how to lease it up, or maybe it's ran down, people don't have money to fix it up, but the property deserves so much better and has so much more potential. So you come in, you do what you call stabilize the property, and all of a sudden you realize, higher income, and now the property is doing great. Another way to invest is for appreciation. For example, if you buy a piece of land and you hold it for years, right? There is no money on it. You're just paying your property taxes. But eventually in a few years, it can double, triple, quadruple. And we've seen it, in Houston, it even go 10 times higher, and you can really make some money on appreciation. And then there is another class of investors called LP, limited partners. Those are the most passive investors. Basically, they got no control over the property. All what they do, they give other people their money, and they have limited partnership in that entity that was created to purchase and run a real estate property.
Mm-hmm. Now, given all these ways to make money by investing in commercial real estate, which way do you recommend?
Well, it really depends on your position, right? It depends what you're after. Are you for that cash flow? Are you for that appreciation? And then, people get even more sophisticated. They consider the tax advantages, disadvantages. They consider passing on the wealth to their children. So it really depends what you want. To me, the most interesting, attractive, and probably most lucrative way would be value add. Because consider this, when you bought this property, right, distressed, mismanaged, misleased, just needs renovation, you bought it for a low price, and all of a sudden you fixed it, you stabilized it, now you're collecting more income, your rents are higher, right? So you can just keep it and collect this higher income. But there's another benefit which is even bigger. The property is worth more now. So if you literally just turn around and sell it a few months later, you sell it at a much higher value, and usually that's a very significant profit to make. That'd be my favorite.
Mm-hmm. Now, what are some investments, or are some investments safer than others?
I'd say yes. It also depends on you, what you perceive safe. For example, if you buy a Walgreens, right? Walgreens has one of the best credits, or Starbucks. The cash flow is not that high, but you know for sure, even if these guys can no longer continue business, if they shut down, they will still pay you rent. If your property stands vacant, they're still paying you rent. For these people, for this kind of companies, with this credit ratings to go out and stop paying you rent, they would need to shut down all their stores in the whole country. So those are very safe tenants with very good credit. Another way to look at this safety is what kind of control you have over your property, right? If something goes wrong, how much equity do you have in the property? Will you be able to pay off that balance to the bank to maintain the control of the property? And obviously that's why I would say, don't over leverage, be careful, make sure you can always pay off the balance should things go wrong, and your income does not cover your debt. So yeah, I guess, loan to value ratio and credit of the tenants, that will give you the most safety.
Safer. And what are the pluses and the minuses for that?
For the tenant credit rating and...
When you had mentioned about the investments being safer than the others, it was like, what are the pluses and minuses?
Oh, yes. There's a very direct correlation, right? The safer your investment is, the lower your return is. Just think of, the government T-bills and certificate deposits, or some non-secured debt financing, right? So the safer it is, the more guaranteed it is, the lower your income will be. And, it goes the other way. If you want to make the most money, you'll have to take some risks. So unsafe properties, unsafe tenants, they'll give you the highest return. Got it.
Now, what risk should someone consider when investing in commercial real estate?
So I will speak from a personal perspective, right? If I was to buy a property, I would look at the balance and diversity. So that, for example, you can buy a good property with 2 tenants. Fantastic location, right? So the property is expensive because of a wonderful location, but there are only 2 tenants. One of them goes out. Do you think that will leave you enough income to pay your mortgage on this property? Probably not. So I would be looking for a property that has at least 5 tenants in it. You also got to look at the risk of the property. What's going to, is this property relevant? Is this city growing, right? Population growth is huge. So will my property always be in demand? You also, something not easy to notice if you're just, if you've not been in this business, a bunch of small towns had this happening to them. Let's say there was a small H-E-B, or there was a small Walmart, right? And everybody gets excited, these are the tenants that bring traffic, so we're gonna build and buy things around them. And Walmart and H-E-B grew so fast, so big, that they went out to the outskirts of the small town, And now they bought acres and acres of land and they built a super Walmart, right? Super center Walmart. Or they built an H-E-B Plus. So all that retail in that old location now becomes almost obsolete, because the moment those guys moved out, that area, that downtown kind of lost its relevance. And it wasn't just with Walmart and H-E-B, it's also, look at the old downtowns, the small towns. They're like, wow, why are they always so empty, some eclectic retail? It's because they're no longer relevant. The attraction got pulled somewhere else because there was undeveloped land somewhere else. So you sort of got to be this visionary to see if the location you invest in will remain relevant.
Right. Now, aside from analyzing and choosing the actual property, what other factors should an investor look at?
Absolutely. So let's say you got this perfect property, but look at the other factors, right? And completely out of blue. For example, we know what happened to the offices, right? COVID happened, and offices will never be what they're now. They will never come back to the kind of purpose and use that they used to be. Or look how fast our industrial is getting repurposed. Or look at the retail, right? Before, the retail would have a lot of clothing stores in them, a lot of specialty stores. You'd be selling, soft goods, specialty goods. And now your retail is limited to, service, medical, beauty, restaurants. So just use changes, right? The way we consume changes. And I don't know, you really got to be very talented to see that forward. But yeah, and another one is obviously your loan terms. Don't forget, if you're leveraging, if you're borrowing to buy your commercial property, your term is shorter. It's usually 5 or 7 years. And you don't know what's going to happen in 5 or 7 years, whether the interest rates will be up or down or the same. And you just need to be prepared. You've got to have a long-term plan for when your loan comes up. Is your property stable? Are you going to sell it? Are you going to be able to refinance? And now people get really surprised, right? When the term was up and the interest rates are high, and now they can't pay their loans with the income that they're collecting. So that's an unfortunate event.
Mm-hmm. Now, Anna, thank you so much for being with us. Will you just tell us a little bit about your brokerage?
Oh, sure. So we do commercial only. We barely know anything about homes. So commercial, and that includes retail, industrial, flex, office, and commercial land. We stick to Houston suburbs because, well, you can't know it all, and it's a disfavor to your client if you, lead them somewhere where you don't really understand.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Anna, for being with us again today. We look forward to having you back on the show.
All right. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. And everyone, we'll be right back after this commercial break.
The best bilingual news, business talk, and technology content 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You are watching Now Media Television, the first bilingual media network in the United States.
El tema está en los países. Liderazgo y experiencia. Nuestro país debe meterse en las grandes discusiones y en los grandes debates. Son parte de una carrera exitosa. Se juegan 2 estados. Él es referente en el periodismo. No definen el 2024. Javier Solórzano te espera cada noche para llevarte las noticias, el análisis y las entrevistas más importantes de lo que sucede día a día en el país. Este es el referente de la noche.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Michelle Briggs, your host for Your Personal Real Estate. Our next guest today is TJ Hilscher. Now, TJ he's one of the owners of HG Home Inspections. I've worked with him. I know exactly the company. How are you doing, TJ?
Doing great. How about yourself, Michelle?
I'm doing wonderful. Welcome back. Thank you so much for being here again with us. Now, today we're going to be talking about commercial inspections. I know that a lot of your business is the residential piece, but there's so much more to you that I don't think a lot of people know. So I want to have a conversation about commercial inspections and really understanding them and what you do and which type of buildings that you do and what is it commercial inspection, what all is entailed. So where do we start with commercial inspections?
Commercial inspections is probably one of the most interesting areas of real estate that we deal with, because a commercial building can be so many different things. I mean, when you think about commercial, a nail salon could be a commercial building, which could be a space, you know, that's 12 by 12 and a rental area. And then you also have commercial that are hotels that are 300-room hotels in downtown Houston or in downtown San Antonio. So it varies quite a bit with commercial inspections. It's probably one of the most challenging areas as an inspection company's owner, and for bidding. People call us, realtors, investors. They call our office and they say, okay, I've got a commercial property I need inspected. It's 120,000 square feet. What is it going to cost? And we have tons of questions when we hear something just as simple as 120,000 square feet and what is it going to cost? Because you can imagine, Michelle, being in real estate and dealing with commercial and residential yourself, that 120,000 square feet could be a bunch of hotel rooms that all have their own power panels, bathrooms, things like that. It could be apartments, or it could be a very large warehouse that's used just for storage and has a very small area for office space, say 10,000 square feet of office space. So there's a lot of questions that go into what exactly is the commercial property that you want us to inspect.
Now, when someone contacts you regarding the commercial property they want inspected and they want you to come out and provide that inspection, what are the top 5 things that they should have ready for you to be able to provide that quote or to set up the right team member to be out there to accomplish their services or what their goals are?
And I'm going to assume those are outside the regular square footage, things like that. Okay, so one we're going to ask what the current usage is of the property. And if it's currently being used, that's a big part of it, because that can really affect scheduling and things like that. And then the second most important is going to be intended use of the property, because that lets us know, for example, how much power they possibly might need at the property, if they're going to be doing a lot of construction to the property, or if the property meets their needs the way it sits. So those are probably some of the most important. Also, the age of the property, a little bit of its history. We really like to get as much information as we can. Unfortunately, a lot of times on the real estate, especially on the realtor's end, they don't have a whole lot of information. A lot of times, even the listing agent doesn't have much. They just know, hey, they make washers here and it's 100,000 square feet. That's all they know. A lot of times, especially in recent years, I've learned from skinning your knees and underquoting and overquoting as well, to actually go out to the property, walk the property, and have a conversation with the buyer, and sometimes, if you can, with the seller as well. If we can do those things, we can really dial in what we need for the inspection, because it's not just a matter of, like with a home, showing up with 1 or 2 or 3 inspectors according to how much square footage it is. If the building, for example, has several what we call package units on the roof, AC units, we're going to bring in an AC company and contract them to come in with us and inspect the property. Sometimes we bring in structural engineers along with us, and we build that into our quote. Elevator companies, sometimes we have to do that as well. So a lot of times it's not just my company that's coming out there. Believe me, we do know how to inspect elevators and things like that, but when you get to a certain scale, you want to bring in those professionals. So a lot of times it takes a week or 2 just to build the team and get the scheduling right with the team to be able to get out there and get the inspection that the buyer really wants.
I can only imagine what a 40-story building would take to inspect. and how long that inspection report would be. Tell us about, because the residential side, you check the plugs, you check for GFCs, you check the light, you check, there's so many things that you check just in a residential home that's, say, 2,000 square feet. But when you're looking at a 40-story building, what is that? Where do you start? You start on the ground floor? Do you start at the top and work your way down? What does that look like?
Well, believe it or not, I usually start in both areas. I'll send part of the team upstairs, and I'll send part of the team downstairs, and then being the chief inspector on the job and the chief inspector for the company, I will walk the property, and I will the first 2 hours we're there, I will talk to every professional we have on the property and basically get their initial assessment. And then at lunchtime that first day, we'll really put together a game plan with my lead inspectors for my company to work with the contractors that we have with us to get the best inspection possible. So, for example, with a hotel or a apartment building or something of that nature, we're going to be really looking at a lot of the same things as a home, but instead of inspecting one home, we're inspecting 300 homes. So we're going to be looking for the same safety features and things like that. Manufacturing facilities, the most important thing we're looking for is it going to meet the requirement of the person purchasing it or the corporation purchasing it.
Mm-hmm. What are the top areas? You're speaking to the AC, electrical. What are the 5 top areas that you inspect when you're looking at a commercial property?
Okay, it's going to be, obviously, we're going to look at structural first. Another thing that you really have to consider in a commercial property that you don't necessarily in a individual residential property is the topography of the property. The parking lot, is it draining properly? Where's that drainage going? Is it going to a retention pond on property? Is it going to a municipal drain that's going to a bayou? Say here in Houston, a lot of it goes to bayous. Those things are one of the major differences. You're going to look at the capacity of the area that they do want climate controlled. Is it meeting that capacity? If they want to expand, that's the biggest thing. If they're wanting to really come in and change the entire property, is it feasible? And the cost analogy, that's really out of our wheelhouse, but a lot of times the people we bring in, the contractors, can really shed light for the buyer on what they're up against. And that's, really when you come down to it, when you book a commercial inspection, that's what you want to know. You want to know, is the building safe? Is it structurally sound? Where the water is going to go when it rains? How much power it's got? And if that power is going to be enough power for what you want to do. And just make sure that it's a fit. That's really a big part of our inspection is it going to fit? Because when they look at it, they assume it's going to fit, and they might have some of their experts come out and look, but they really need to know the ins and outs of what the building has already and what it's going to cost to bring it to what they want, or if it has what they already need and they just need to reconfigure. So there's a lot to it.
Now, when you have someone that is taking on a property or purchasing it and they are going to reconfigure it and they're making some changes to that, do you go back out to do a secondary inspection to make sure, again, that those changes are up to code or are exactly what they're needing?
Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. It really depends. A lot of times, if we have really savvy buyers and we have a good chance to walk the property prior to the inspection, they will bring out their contractors with them, and we'll have a discussion at the end of the inspection of what we found and what they want to do with the property. If it's in the city and they have to submit, say, in a municipality where they have to submit drawings, have city inspectors come out, things like that. In those situations, typically we're not called back out much, but occasionally they want us to come back out and just go behind the city inspectors, because let's face it, city inspectors, they do a great job, but they're there to make sure the bare minimum's met. They're not really looking out for the client's best interests. They're just looking out to make sure that it's done to code. So something can be done to code, but not done to what the buyer or the new owner is wanting it to be done to, or the standard that they want it to be done to.
Right. Now, TJ, let's close today with how do they get a hold of you?
Well, that's really easy. Hilscher Group LLC is our corporate name. It's HG Home Inspection. You can find us online at hghomeinspection.com. You can call our office at 281-782-7451. And we're there to help. So you can find us on social media as well. And the nice thing is we can get out there typically immediately, but with commercial property, sometimes there's some planning involved. Because, I mean, like I mentioned earlier, if it's a nail salon, we can get out there that day, inspect it, and you're done. But if you're talking about a 40, 50-story building, it might take a week, but we're going to get it done. So just give us a call. We'll get out there, and we'll give you the best inspection you could possibly get.
Wonderful. Well, again, TJ, thank you so much. We look forward to you coming back and being a part of the show and really improving and increasing our knowledge around home inspections and commercial inspections. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Michelle.
Everyone, we'll be right back after this commercial break.
The best bilingual news, business talk, and technology content 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You are watching Now Media Television, the first bilingual media network in the United States.
El tema está en los países. Liderazgo y experiencia. Nuestro país debe meterse en las grandes discusiones y en los grandes debates. Son parte de una carrera exitosa. Juegan dos estados. Él es referente en el periodismo. No definen el 2024. Javier Solórzano te espera cada noche para llevarte las noticias, el análisis y las entrevistas más importantes de lo que sucede día a día en el país. Este es el referente de la noche.
Thank you to all of our guests today and to our viewers. This show airs Thursdays at 5 p.m. And again, we want to be your resource for all things real estate. Should you be looking to sell your house or buy a new home, I invite you to allow me to be of service to you and your family. I'm your host, Michelle Briggs, and this is your Personal Real Estate.
This has been a Now Media Television feature presentation. All rights reserved.
República H, con Sofía García.
Una república que necesita saber cuál es el camino correcto.
En República H te diremos qué pasa en cada rincón del país. ¿Qué pasa en tu estado? ¿Qué hace tu gobernador, presidente municipal o alcalde en materia de seguridad, salud, desarrollo, economía o servicios básicos para atender a su población? Tenemos desplegados más de 70 corresponsales en todo el país y más allá de las fronteras.
República H, de lunes a viernes a las 8 de la noche por Heraldo Televisión.
Palitos y Bolitas es la catedral de la explicación. Este programa es la única parada que necesitas para entender los porqués y cómo de todo lo que pasa en México y el mundo. Lunes a viernes, 7 p.m. por Heraldo Televisión.
The best bilingual news, business talk, and technology content 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You are watching Now Media Television, the first bilingual media network in the United States.
El tema está en los países. Liderazgo y experiencia. Nuestro país debe meterse en las grandes discusiones y en los grandes debates. Son parte de una carrera exitosa. Juegan dos estados. Él es referente en el periodismo. No definen el el 2024.
Javier Solórzano te espera cada noche para llevarte las noticias, el análisis y las entrevistas más importantes de lo que sucede día a día en el país.
Este es el referente de la noche.
The best bilingual news, business talk, and technology content 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You are watching Now Media Television, the first bilingual media network in the United States.
Papalote Museo del Niño abrió sus puertas mostrando a la población mexicana un concepto novedoso, divertido y sustentado científicamente diseñado para la población infantil. Para el 1 de octubre de 1993, Arena México, en el marco del 60 aniversario de la empresa mexicana de lucha libre, Consejo Mundial de Lucha Libre, vimos cómo una Atlántida, de nueva cuenta, le daba otro triunfo con sabor a gloria a Atlantis, ya que pudo desenmascarar a Mano Negra, un luchador con más colmillo que el ídolo de los niños. El martes 26 de octubre, fue un momento trágico. La Arena Coliseo fue el escenario donde en la lucha semifinal, Oro se desvaneció a un costado del ring. La atención médica llegó, fue llevado en ambulancia, pero en el